In today's world of instant communication, where blue ticks, quick replies, and social media stories are everything, silence feels like rejection. But let me tell you something counterintuitive: silence often says more than words ever can, especially when it comes from someone who once held a piece of your heart. When she stops calling, stops reaching out, most men immediately assume, she doesn't care anymore. But that's not always the truth. That's just your ego interpreting uncertainty as abandonment. The truth is, not every woman expresses her thoughts outwardly. Some women fall quiet not because they've stopped thinking about you, but because they're thinking about you too much. Silence, in many cases, is a sign of emotional overload, not emotional absence. When someone feels deeply and doesn't know what to do with those feelings, they often retreat. Not out of indifference, but out of confusion, fear, or even respect. A woman who's thinking about you every night might not reach for the phone. But that doesn't mean you're not on her mind. In fact, if you're not hearing from her, that could be the very proof that she's thinking of you more than you think. Let's go deeper. Think about how the human mind processes emotion. According to cognitive psychology, emotions that are repressed or withheld become internalized. That means instead of acting, she reflects. Instead of texting you, she replays memories. Instead of calling you, she re-examines every word you last said. This is not passive, it's incredibly active. It's just invisible to you. There's a kind of internal dialogue happening within her. Should I reach out? Will I look weak? Did he even care? Is he thinking about me too? These questions swirl at night when the distractions fade and silence takes over. So, no, just because she's not calling doesn't mean she's moved on. She may be thinking about you during the quietest, most vulnerable parts of her day. That matters. You see, our culture has trained us to believe that love is about constant validation. But some of the deepest feelings are unspoken. Real emotional impact doesn't always show up in someone's behavior immediately. It lingers in their thoughts. It lives in their hesitation. She could be lying in bed with her phone in hand, scrolling past your name 100 times, battling the impulse to call. That mental friction is not nothing. It's a sign. Now, here's the part most people overlook. Women often express emotion through absence. That may sound strange, but it's true. The more deeply she feels, the more she might retreat. Not because she wants to push you away, but because she wants to protect what she felt with you. There's a paradox here. Her silence could mean she cares more than she's ready to admit. But here's the twist. You don't chase that silence. You don't break it out of desperation. You respect it. Because when someone is processing feelings internally, your interruption might not bring clarity. It might bring pressure. Your job isn't to react to her silence with anxiety. Your job is to understand that silence can be a part of emotional growth. For both of you. You'll know she's thinking about you not because she tells you, but because you feel it. And that's a different level of connection. It's energetic, it's psychological. And sometimes it's more powerful than words. So next time the phone doesn't ring, don't assume she's forgotten you. Assume that something deeper is unfolding. Something silent, something real, something human. People often believe that emotions work like a light switch, on or off, present or gone. Especially when someone pulls away, when they stop calling, stop texting, we assume their feelings have disappeared. But that's not how emotional attachment works. Not in real life, and certainly not when the connection had depth. If she ever genuinely cared about you, that attachment didn't vanish the moment the communication stopped. Emotion doesn't operate on logic, and love doesn't obey deadlines. When a woman builds a bond with you, especially one that touches her emotionally and intellectually, that experience embeds itself into her subconscious. It doesn't evaporate overnight. You might not see it, but she's still carrying the weight of those memories, even if she doesn't talk about them. That's the paradox. She may be emotionally affected, even more than you are, but she's just not showing it. See, we confuse visibility with existence. We assume if we don't see the signs, if she's not messaging, not liking our posts, not asking how we are, then nothing's happening on her end. That's emotional blindness. What's happening is often invisible but intense. She could be thinking about the conversations you had, wondering why things ended, or reflecting on what you meant to her. That kind of internal dialogue is real. It may not be loud, but it's persistent. Let's think psychologically for a moment. Studies show that emotional bonds, especially romantic ones, activate the same neurological patterns as addiction. When a person withdraws from someone they're attached to, the brain doesn't immediately move on. It goes through withdrawal. Her silence isn't a clean slate, it's an emotional struggle. And at night, when the world gets quiet and her distractions fade, that's when you show up. Not on her screen, but in her thoughts. Emotionally mature women don't always reach out when they miss someone. That's another layer. They reflect. They assess. They question whether reaching out would help or hurt the future you want. They whether their longing is genuine or just a reaction to loneliness. It's not that the emotions don't exist. It's that they're being processed privately. And processing takes time, distance. Silence. If you meant something to her, you still exist somewhere in her mind. Not as a text thread, not as a notification, but as an e-presence. A part of her story. The challenge is, most men want to see proof before they believe it. But the truth is, by the time you see the proof, by the time she calls or writes or reconnects, she's already been thinking about you for days, maybe weeks. That emotional groundwork was already laid in the silence. You just didn't witness it. And here's something important. Emotional attachment isn't linear. She might feel fine for a week, convinced she's over it. Then out of nowhere, a song, a scent, or a memory breaks her down. That's not weakness. That's human nature. Real connections echo. They don't follow logic. They resurface in unexpected ways. So the real question is not, is she still thinking about me? It's, what version of me is she remembering? That's where your power is. Because you can't control whether she calls, but you can control the man she remembers. The one who made her laugh. The one who made her feel safe. The one who challenged her, inspired her, or made her believe in something deeper. You're still part of her story. Maybe not in her present, but in her mind. And trust me, when you've left a real mark, the silence becomes less about forgetting and more about remembering. On repeat, one of the biggest mistakes men make is thinking that if a woman isn't speaking, she's not watching. But the truth is, many women don't wait for words, they wait for signs. And the signs they're looking for, they're not always obvious. The future you want. They're hidden in how you carry yourself after the silence begins. How you behave when you think no one is paying attention. That's where the real test begins. You have to understand something essential about feminine energy. It's intuitive. While men tend to act to understand, women often observe to feel. She might not say a word, but she's paying attention to your patterns, to your presence, to your energy. She's reading the space between the messages you don't send, the moments you don't chase. And in that space, she begins to evaluate not just how much you care, but who you've become since the last time she saw you. A woman who once felt something for you will rarely just move on without at least watching from a distance. This could be through social media, mutual friends, or even energetic awareness. She might not like your posts, but she's seeing them. She might not call, but she's checking your story. Not to judge you, but to understand where you stand, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And this is where most men miscalculate. They think going silent means becoming invisible. So they panic, they try to break the silence with a text, a meme, a hey, just thinking about you. But what they don't realize is that the silence itself is the moment she's watching. It's her test, and not a game. This isn't about manipulation, it's about alignment. She's trying to see if you've grown, or if you're stuck in the same emotional loop that caused the distance in the first place. A mature woman doesn't want a man who's just waiting. She wants a man who's evolving. So when she pulls back, she's not always hoping you chase her. She's hoping you'll rise. And she's looking for signs that you're not defined by the loss, but transformed by it. The silence, to her, becomes a mirror. And what she sees in that mirror determines whether she comes closer or lets go. This goes deeper into the psychology of attraction. You see, attraction isn't just physical. It's existential. It's about who you are when life puts pressure on you. When the comfort of communication is gone, who do you become? Do you lose yourself? Or do you sharpen your focus, build your path, refine your presence? That's the sign she's watching for. She's not checking to see if you still want her. She's trying to see if you're becoming the man you said you were when things were good. Women are not just listening to what you say. They're observing how you navigate distance. That's the message that matters more. And when they don't hear from you, they tune into something deeper. Your energy, your consistency, your character in the quiet moments. The days you could have messaged her but didn't. The nights you could have folded but chose to reflect instead. So what should you do? Let her watch. Let her wonder. Let your life speak so loudly in your growth, in your poise, that silence becomes your message. Not out of pride, but out of presence. Not to prove a point, but to reveal your evolution. Because a woman who once felt something for you may stop talking, but she never stops sensing. It's easy to assume that when someone stays quiet, they don't care. But what most people miss, especially men, is that silence can actually be a form of protection, not from you necessarily, but from what she feels. And more importantly, from what she fears she'll feel again. When a woman stops calling, when she retreats without explanation, it's tempting to think she's cold or disconnected. But often, she's not avoiding you. She's avoiding the version of herself that loved you openly. Vulnerability is a powerful force. And once a woman has opened up emotionally, shown you her heart, and perhaps even gotten hurt in the process, she learns something. Exposure comes with risk. You have to understand that for many women, especially those who've been emotionally honest in the past, vulnerability isn't easy to revisit. It's not just about reaching out, it's about opening a door they once closed for their own survival. She could be lying awake at night thinking about you, wanting to call, wanting to hear your voice, but she won't, because to her, picking up that phone isn't just an action. It's surrender. It's vulnerability all over again. And if there was pain before, confusion, emotional imbalance, or even just a lack of reciprocation, that pain becomes a reference point. Her mind tells her, last time I reached out, I was left hanging. Or, last time I opened up, I lost a part of myself. So now silence becomes her shield. It's not that she doesn't feel. It's that she feels too much, and the silence gives her a sense of control. Psychologically, this is a protective mechanism. It's called emotional self-preservation. When someone has experienced emotional risk without enough return, the brain starts associating openness with danger. So what happens? She withdraws. Not because she doesn't care, but because she cares too much to risk going through that cycle again. This is something a lot of men fail to grasp. We think that courage is action. That making the call, sending the text, and confessing the feeling. That's what strength looks like. But for her, silence is strength too. It's restraint. It's a way of saying, I could break the silence, but not at the cost of my peace. And that restraint doesn't mean she's over you. It might mean she's protecting the last part of her that still feels something for you. So what do you do with this knowledge? You don't pressure her. You don't guilt her. You respect the space she's created. But you also recognize it for what it is. Not indifference, but emotional defense. Not detachment, but guarded attachment. If she's not calling, that's not necessarily rejection. It might be the highest form of emotional complexity. She's still processing, still remembering, still feeling. but she's doing it all behind the walls she built to protect herself. And if you force your way in too soon, you don't break through, you break herb. And that's not strength, that's recklessness. So instead of chasing, you evolve. Instead of demanding her attention, you become the kind of man whose presence no longer threatens her peace. A man who doesn't need to be chased or chosen to know his worth. Because if she's protecting herself, it means you meant something. Don't take that lightly. It means the connection wasn't weak. It was real enough to wound. And anything real enough to wound is real enough to matter. If what you shared with her was real, if it held emotional weight, then trust me. It didn't just disappear when the messages stopped. Real connection leaves an echo, and even in silence, even in absence, that echo doesn't vanish. It lingers. It loops. It plays over and over again in the background of her mind, especially when the world goes quiet at night. We tend to think relationships end the moment people stop talking, but that's not how memory works. That's not how energy works. Real connection embeds itself deeper than conversation. It lives in the subconscious. It shows up in sudden moments. When she hears a song, walks past a place you two shared, or even hears your name mentioned casually. And just like that, she's not in the present anymore. She's right back in that moment with you. Not physically, but emotionally. This is something men need to understand on a deeper level. We're conditioned to chase closure, clarity, black and white answers. But the emotional world doesn't work like that. It's not binary. Feelings don't expire. They transform, they get buried under responsibility, pride, or even fear. But they remain. Especially if what you gave her wasn't shallow. Now, here's the thing. When a bond is real, it rewires you. That's not poetic. It's biological. Neuroscience tells us that strong emotional experiences literally create new neural pathways. When a woman feels loved, safe, seen, her brain registers experiences like imprints. And when that connection is disrupted, she may stop reaching out, but she can't simply erase those imprints overnight. No one can. So even if she's moved on with her routine, her work, her friendships, even if she's convincing herself she's over it, the echo still finds her. Sometimes it's soft, like a passing memory. Other times it's loud, like an unexpected rush of emotion she can't fully explain. That's what real connection does. It echoes, not always in ways you can measure, but in ways she can feel. Now, don't mistake that echo for a guarantee that she'll come back. That's not the point. The point is to recognize that what you had AU meant something, and that meaning doesn't vanish because she stopped calling. If it was real, it shaped her, and she's walking around carrying a piece of that experience, whether she admits it or not. That's why you don't need to constantly remind her of what you were. You don't need to fight to stay in her mind. If it was real, you're already there. The question is, when that echo reaches her, what version of you is she remembering? Because she's not just remembering your words. She's remembering how you made her feel, how you handled conflict, how you showed up, or didn't. She's recalling your emotional tone, your presence, your attention to detail, all of it. So if your connection left an echo, it's not static. It's alive. It grows or decays based on who you become after the silence begins. That's where your focus should be. Not on forcing your way back in, but on becoming the man whose presence would still feel like peace to her. That's the echo you want her to sit with. Not the noise of past mistakes, but the quiet power of who you are now, evolved, self-aware, rooted. So don't underestimate the moments you shared. Don't downplay what was real just because it didn't last in the way you hoped. Some connections aren't meant to last forever, but they are meant to A-shape forever. There comes a point where you have to stop asking, is she thinking about me? And start asking, what is she thinking of when she thinks about me? That's where the power really is. Because if she's not calling, not reaching out, but you know there was something real between you, then yes, she's thinking. But what matters more than if she remembers you is how she remembers you. And that brings us to something most people overlook. Attraction isn't reignited by effort. It's reignited by evolution. Growth is the silent message that speaks louder than any apology, text, or love letter. When she's quiet, when she's not calling, she's not waiting to be chased. She's watching to see if the man she once connected with is becoming someone worth reimagining a future with. Because let's be honest, women don't just want attention. They want alignment. A lot of men get this part wrong. They think that in her silence, they have to do more, send the message, write the long explanation, show up uninvited. But none of that answers the real question sitting in the back of her mind. Has he grown? Has he evolved beyond the emotional patterns that caused the distance? Has he built something meaningful in the silence? Not just to impress her, but because he values himself. Because women don't always want a comeback. They want a comeback story. And that means becoming the kind of man who no longer needs to prove his worth through her attention. A man who builds silently. A man who lets his presence grow stronger in his absence. That's when the silence becomes magnetic. That's when curiosity is triggered. Not because you chased, but because you leveled up without an audience. See, the greatest leverage in silence is growth. While most people waste it wondering what the other person is doing, you should be using it to build what the other's next version of you looks like. And this isn't about getting her back. That's short-sighted. It's about becoming the man she would never want to lose again. Not through charm, but through action. Through clarity. Think about it. What if she does come back? What version of you will she find? The same man with the same questions and the same emotional instability, or someone who used her silence as a signal to recalibrate, not just for her, but for himself, because when you do the work in the quiet moments, people feel it. They might not be in contact with you, but they sense it. Energy doesn't lie. And the more you evolve, the more undeniable your presence becomes, even when you're nowhere near her. This is where power lies. Not in control, not in ego, but in growth. The kind of growth that doesn't demand recognition. The kind that doesn't need to be broadcast. The kind that just is. When she finally thinks of you, and she will, you want that memory to collide with the reality of who you've become. That's when everything shifts. That's when the silence starts to speak differently to her. Not as a void, but as a space you filled with purpose, discipline, and self-respect. So don't chase the call. Don't wait for her to validate what was real. Use the silence as a forge. Let it refine you, shape you, elevate you. Because whether she comes back or not, your growth will always be the loudest message she'll never forget.